Keep your light trimmed. Keep your light trimmed. I like it. I'm in the spotlight. Okay. Enough of my ego. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, choir. You sounded fabulous. Does it sound fabulous? Chris Johnson, our choir director, thank you so much. Judy Preble, our ivory tickler. Just say thank you, and you're welcome. Thank you. All right. That's my talk today. We're going to talk about priming the pump today. How many of you have ever worked with one of those old farm pumps where, you've got, I see hands up, you know what I'm talking about, where if the pressure runs low or if you haven't used it for a while, you've got to pour some water into the pump to get the pressure built back up before it will actually pump anything? Yep, yeah. And that's sometimes how life is. We got to give the thing that we want before we can get what it is that we really want in full supply. Have you noticed? Yeah. The universe is in a process of givingness, and it has given us life, and we get to receive it and then share it. Okay, we get to move it on. We get to re-gift it. This is a case where re-gifting is good. Oftentimes when we get a gift and we're re-gifting, it's because we don't like the gift. But life is a great gift, right? Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. I can do some memorial services if you're done, but I'd rather do other more life-affirming services if you don't mind. So, life is a good thing. I remember going to high school dances, and you'd have a lineup of boys on one side and girls against the other wall. How many of you kind of remember what I'm talking about, or you've seen what I'm talking about, or you like that? And nothing happens. There's a connection that wants to happen between the two, but nothing happens between the two until one of them gives of themselves to walk across that humongous expansive dance floor. And it's usually one of the girls, right? Yep. And say, will you come dance with me? Okay? And maybe somebody can go grab Marnie and ask her to deal with her car there so it doesn't keep going off. That would be fabulous. She's over in the children's church. Kim Moore has it. Thank you so much, Kim. Okay? We have to give. We have to do something in order to get the universe to start continuing to cycle for us. So life has already given us the gift of life. The universe has already given us that gift. And we get to say yes to it, but we also get to play with it and we get to practice with it by giving of it. And so many of us hang back and say, well, I'll give when I get, when you do something for me. And that's where we end up on the dance floor with one side saying, I'll go dance with the girl when she comes over and asks me, and the girls say, I'll go dance with the guy when he comes over and asks me, and nobody ends up dancing. Okay? So we have to do something. We have to step out of ourselves, and we have to start to give. We have to start to express. So we've gotten that law. Emerson says that the law of compensation, which is what I put out comes back to me, is the law of laws. What I put out, what I give out, is what I get back. Is the fundamental law of laws. Take a breath. Breathe that in. Michael Beckwith refers to the fact that we can either live in a giving economy or a getting economy. And the economy we live in is not the one that's out there determined by some government or group of economists. The economy we live in is our own economy. We create our own economy. Have you noticed? Okay? And so we get to create that. We get to live in our own world, in our own consciousness, in our own soup of consciousness. What's her name? What's her name? I hope she doesn't hear this video because she's going to write me a letter. Catherine Ponder, who wrote the fabulous book, The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity. And if you haven't read that book, you need that on your bookshelf. One of my mentors said that she read the first 4 chapters of that book once a year, and it would always completely transform her finances. Just in case anybody here wants their finances transformed, Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, I hope the bookstore has it, and if they don't, they will soon. First 4 chapters. It's a big, thick book. You don't have to read the whole thing. It's good to read the whole thing, but the first 4 chapters will rock your world. In the greatest of the laws, she says, I excitedly surmised, this is when she's first discovering the law, I excitedly surmised that my potential wealth, health, and happiness were actually within me, waiting to be radiated outward into my world as healthy, wealthy, happy thoughts, feelings, expectations, and decrees, which in turn would attract like results into my life. My good is within me. That's why we sing the song, keep your lamp trimmed and burning. The light's within you. Don't stick it under a bushel basket. Right? We already are the light. We already are the gift. We already are the abundance. But we have this misconception that it's out there somewhere and we have to go get it. And so instead, we're radiating outwards. When we're living in consciousness, when we're living in a giving economy, we recognize that we already are that economy. We already are that abundance, and I'm radiating it out knowing that it has to come back. The law of giving and receiving works no matter what. It's the in-breath and the out-breath of the universe. You know, we can't do just in-breath or just out-breath, right? For very long. Not successfully. And when we breathe out, we feed the plants that then produce the oxygen that we get to breathe in. We live in a reciprocal universe that keeps on cycling around and around and around. Okay? So we want to play with that consciousness of I get to cycle, I get to give receive, give, receive, give, receive, give, receive. And I want to be clear, it was in the reading, but I want to be clear, this is not the commercial for the church giving, okay? That's next week. This is just talking about the principle of giving and receiving in everything in our lives. It includes money, but it also includes our health, it includes our love, it includes our relationships, it includes our friendships, it includes our career, it includes every single aspect of life. All of it falls under the purview of the idea of giving, receiving. There was a railroad executive who started off as a track layer for the railroads, and he ran into, after many years, a friend of his who he had started off with at the same time laying tracks. And they started reminiscing about old times, and finally his friend said, you're so lucky. And he says, what do you mean? He says, you ended up as an executive. I'm still out there laying tracks. He says, no, I'm not lucky. He said, the difference is you were laying tracks. I was building a railroad. There's a similar story of an architect in England who had drawn up plans to build a cathedral, and he walked by the worksite one day and noticed 3 people who were helping to build the cathedral, and he just decided to go check in with them, talk to them, and he said, first guy, what are you doing? And he says, I'm laying brick. Laying brick. He asked the second guy, what are you doing? He says, I'm feeding my family. He had a higher purpose. He wasn't just laying brick, he had a higher purpose. He asked the third guy that he came to, he says, what are you doing? He says, I am building a cathedral to God. What are you doing in your life? Are you laying bricks? Or are you building a cathedral to God? Yeah. Anybody else besides Luke? Yeah. And if you're not, it's not too late to start. If you've been caught up in that I'm just laying bricks consciousness, it's okay to start and shift and say, you know what, I'm going to build something bigger. I'm going to have a bigger vision. Because when we have a bigger vision, it is easier and more enjoyable to give than it is when we're just laying brick or laying track for no purpose whatsoever. Catherine Ponder, what's her name, also says, it is what we really think deep within ourselves most of the time, rather than the big front we may put up to others, that unconsciously attracts like results to us. My buddy Michael Beckwith says, it's your secret thoughts that you can't hide because they show up as the results in your life. Okay? So if your life is showing up in certain ways that you're going, I don't like what's showing up, that's the hidden beliefs that are showing up. A lot of us want to believe the proper religious science beliefs, but what's really going on underneath that, because we haven't ever faced it and dealt with it, is the fact that we're still believing some of the old paradigms. And some of those old paradigms, when we come to giving, there's 3 things that usually hold us back, or there may be more, but I'll take 3 things that just hold us back from giving. Okay? First of all, the idea that our good is out there. Most of us have grown up in this culture with the belief that our good is out there. We got to go out there and get it. We got to fight for it. We got to suffer for it. We got to work hard for it. Anybody ever hear that? It's hard work for you to succeed. Hard work. We may have to steal. We may have to be greedy. We may have to compete and shove other people aside. Okay? And that's a myth. But if we believe that and start operating that way, what we're really doing is pushing our good farther and farther and farther away from us. We might get stuff. If we're successful at that game, we might get stuff. But stuff is not our good. Stuff is not that which gives our soul and our heart and our lives joy. So if we believe that our good is out there and not that it's within here and we get to radiate it out, we have trouble with the giving process. The second place we fall into it with the giving process is fear. I'm afraid of giving because I don't have enough. Anybody besides me ever been there? Okay. I don't have enough. And it's not just necessarily about money, it's about love. It's about time. It's about anything that we want to give. One of my teachers said, whatever it is that you want more of in your life, give that. Wherever it is that you're feeling lack, give that. So if I'm feeling a lack of money, find a place to give money. If I'm feeling a lack of time, find a place to give time. If I'm feeling a lack of love, find a place to give love. So whatever it is. And our mind wants to go, no, it's the opposite. I can't give that until I get more. You know? When I was, many, many years ago, I was in a pretty dark place, and I was stuck financially and pretty darn broke, and a practitioner offered to help me and work with me. And she said, you're going to pay me to work with you. So you can pay me what you can afford at the start. And I said, that's like about $1 right now. And she goes, okay, we'll start there. And so I paid her $1 for the first session. Her normal fee was $90, by the way. I paid her $1 for the first session. She said, you're going to pay me whatever you can pay me, and I'm going to work with you every single week. I was actually, I already had a plan to take myself off the planet. And she did not like that. She thought I belonged on the planet. And I'm glad she did. These days I do too, by the way. But I worked with her for $1. The next week I worked with her for $5. I could pay her $5. I come into a little bit of money. The next week I had a job. I could pay her $45. And the week after that I had a career that lasted for 5 years, and I could pay her full $90 fee from then on. Okay? And that's not because I'm so wonderful and special, but it is because, A, I gave something. At some level, whatever it is that I want, whatever it is that you want in your life, give that. Wherever it is you feel you can't, give that. And it will transform and shift your life. It goes counter to what our mind will say, but trust me, it is powerful and it works. Take a breath. And then the third thing we do is ignorance of the law. The third thing that holds us back in giving is just flat ignorance of the law. And right now, none of you are ignorant about the law because we've just talked about it. So that's not you, but out there, you know some people, are people who are ignorant of the law. They just don't understand the law of giving and receiving, how it works. An example of that is the guy who wakes up in a cold cabin on a really frigid morning and finds out that his wood stove has gone out. There's no heat in the place. He's still warm under the covers. And he looks over at the wood stove and he says, you give me some heat and I'll give you some wood. Okay? We've all met people like that. Once in a while in our past, we have been people like that. Don't show your hands. But we understand that we have to give first in order to receive. We have to prime the pump. We have to put wood in the stove and set it on fire before we get something. We have to give in order to receive. And so we radiate out our good. We keep our lamps lit and burning. We keep giving that. The second place where we get into trouble is the other half of the cycle. Because remember, we talked about that it's an in-breath and an out-breath of the universe. It's a give and receive. Now, some of us are great, great, great givers. But when it comes time to receive, like say a compliment on tickling the ivories, not picking on anybody in particular, but to receive a compliment, to receive a gift, to receive something, then we put up our hand and say, no, not me. I don't deserve it. I don't need it. I'm a lone ranger. I'm going to go it by myself. I don't need you, and I don't need anybody else. I know there's nobody like that here, but you've met people like that. Okay? And so we block the flow of receiving. It's like standing out in a beautiful, life-giving rainstorm like yesterday, but maybe a gentler one. Where the universe, Jesus said that the rain falls over the heads of the just and the unjust alike. Now, growing up in Portland, Oregon, living in Seattle a long time, that didn't mean a whole lot to me. Like, yeah, it rains a lot. What are you expecting? Living in a drought climate, which, by the way, it's called the desert, rain was life-giving. Rain was good. Rain was prosperity. And so he said the rain falls over the heads of the just and the unjust alike. The rain, the universe is dumping its good on all of us all the time. It doesn't matter whether you're good, bad, or whatever. But some of us stand there with our umbrellas up and don't receive our good. We block it from coming with our consciousness. Anybody know who I'm talking about? Yes. Okay? I saw a big hand in the back there. And so we are busy radiating out these wonderful things, but we don't receive the radiation back. We keep our lamps trimmed and burning, but we don't bother to receive the light that is being shared by others. Take a breath. And so I invite you to start to become willing to receive. Prosperity actually has 5 different spokes of a wheel, if you want to compare it to that. Giving, which we have been talking about, receiving, which we are talking about right now, asking for what you want. Oh. For some of us, that's a tough thing, isn't it? You ever been with a person that you sit there and just go, just please tell me what you want? If you loved me, if you really loved me, you'd just know. You wouldn't have to ask. I wouldn't have to tell you. Okay? Some of you have experienced that before. A few of you might have been that person before. In Foundations class, in when we do spiritual mind treatment, I teach, be specific with what you're telling the universe that you want. What specifically do you want to manifest? Are you willing to ask for your good? Are you willing to declare, what is it that I want? That's part of the receiving process, is that I get clear and I ask. And for some of us, that's really tough. The 4th spoke is another tough one. Forgiving. Forgiveness. And the 5th spoke is gratitude. We'll talk about those in a couple minutes. How many of you love to give gifts to people? It feels good, right? Some of you do. Some of you don't, not so much. Okay? It feels good when you give, right? How do you think the other person feels when you won't receive from them? So it denies them the opportunity to be able to give to you. It denies them the opportunity to fully participate in the dance of giving and receiving. So are you willing to be a willing receiver, a gracious receiver, and just receive the good as it comes to you? Yes. Yes. I'll ask that again. Are you willing? Yes. All right. And so we open up to receive the good that has been given to us. We give and we receive. We play on both sides of that cycle. Where we get blocked in the receiving and asking, once again, is fear. Fear looks like, I'm not good enough to receive that. I'm not good enough to ask for what I want. I don't really deserve it. Oh, that's a lovely dress you're wearing. Oh, this old thing. I got that at the discount store years ago. My least favorite sister gave it to me. Lone Ranger, we already talked about. Ignorance of the law of giving and receiving, just plain ignorance. Okay? The belief that if you give me something, I'm going to have to give you something. Tit for tat. My mom was great for that. I was sharing with the first service that if I forgot to send her a birthday card, I would not get a birthday card the next birthday. If I sent her a birthday card with $20 in it, I would get a birthday card with $20 in it the next birthday. Tit for tat, exactly. Okay? And so there's some of us, and I also had a friend whose father believed that if you gave him a gift, he had to give you a gift back. And so he would not receive anything from anyone because he didn't want to give anything back. I mean, to almost a neurotic, extent. So we have this belief that if I take something in, if I just receive, I'm going to have to give something back to you. I can't just receive. This is a deservingness and a worthiness issue. Are you worthy enough to receive, to just receive?
Yes.
Few of you are. Let's try it again. Are you, the one sitting in your chair, the one wearing your socks, if you're wearing socks, the one not wearing socks if you're not wearing socks, are you deserving enough to receive your good?
Yes.
All right. Yes. If you need permission from a minister who's connected with God, yes, you are. I have that from on high. I just got channeled. Kiana likes to stop me over at the door there and say, you were talking to me today. So I'm talking to you today, and I'm talking to everybody else here today. God said you are deserving enough to receive your good. Are we good?
Yes.
All right. Another thing that blocks us is we don't trust the universe and we don't trust other people. We live in a fear. We live in a lack of trust. And when we live in that lack of trust, we can't let it in because we've got to keep it all blocked out. Take a breath. You may have met people like that. You may have sometimes experienced that yourselves. I know I have. And so we start to begin to say, I'm willing to trust the universe. I'm willing to practice trusting the universe. I'm willing to let it in even a little bit. I'm willing to start opening the door and letting it in. God doesn't need the door open wide, huge. Get a little crack. So a friend of mine says, if you're just willing to let the universe in, to let spirit in, it'll happen. Okay? So just that little crack. I'm willing to receive my good. Say it with me. I'm willing to receive my good. I am worthy enough to receive my good. Okay, and just notice how that feels. And if a little chatter is going off in your mind, see Reverend Mary afterwards, and probably Sharon will do the same for some practitioner work. They'll help you to work through that. A couple of other things we talked about asking. It's important to ask for what you want. It's important to ask for what you want. It's just good, healthy communication, right? Don't you like it when somebody that you're with just clearly says, "Can you give me this?" Now the answer might be no, I can't. And that's a perfectly valid answer too, by the way. Just no, at this time I can't. I've got Jim sitting right here. Said, "David, could you give me $1,000 right now?" I'd say, "I don't have my checkbook with me at the moment. Sorry." Give you chocolate. Got a stash in my office. Ask for what you want. I joke about that, but I came here and I talk about chocolate all the time, and so more and more and more, I'm getting more and more chocolate because why? I've asked for it. The previous church, when they were hiring me, I said, I will work for brownies. They couldn't pay me a whole lot of money, so I said, I'll work for brownies. I always had chocolate going with that church. That's where I got some of this. So asking for what you want is so important. It's so key. And yet most of us are trained, don't ask for much. Don't want too much. I'm saying yes, ask for what you want. Ask for your heart's desire. Ask for what you really want. Not what you think you might be able to get by with or a little tiny bit of it, but what you really want. The worst that'll happen is the individual you're asking right in front of you might say no, but if you're asking the universe, it's going to say yes. It only has one response, and that's yes. Ask it for what you want. Next, forgive. I hate that process. I want to hang on to my grudges. So-and-so really did do me wrong. There's a couple times I really did wrong, too. But every prosperity book that I've read, for some doggone reason, every single one of them has a chapter or a big section on forgiveness. Now, I don't get forgiveness and money, but somehow some people who are wiser than me say it's really important, so I practice it. And I invite you to forgive. How many people here besides me have done something at some point in time that was not your highest and best involving another person? Okay? Some people have two hands up. Some people have their hands and foot. Yeah. And how many of you have had somebody interact with you in a way that they weren't acting from their highest and best? Okay? The way to dissolve all of that, because if we start hanging on to it, it gums up and blocks the flow. It's like getting your hose from the Spirit all gunked up. It's like getting your arteries all clogged up. If you ever have clogged arteries, take a forgiveness diet. Truly. If you have clogged intestines, take a forgiveness diet. Okay? And start forgiving. If you have a stuckness around money, start forgiving. Because unforgiveness clogs everything. Unforgiveness clogs. So practice forgiving. Now, forgiving does not mean, just so we're very clear, that you have to condone what the person did, or that you have to like the person or go to lunch with the person. Doesn't mean any of that stuff. It just means I am not going to hang on to my hurt and my anger and stuff about what happened anymore. It just gets it out of you. You don't have to become friends with them. If they were truly abusive, they were truly abusive, and you don't have to hang out with them anymore. You know, if you've done something wrong to another person, you might want to see if it's appropriate to make amends, to go make it right. And if it's not, let it go. If they've already left the planet, let it go. But just ask them for forgiveness. Their consciousness is still around. But practice forgiveness. Take a breath. I know it's a deep subject. We won't spend a whole lot more time on it. But every prosperity book I've ever read says forgiveness is key. And finally, gratitude. Living in a consciousness of gratitude. We just talked about this recently. Ernest Holmes says that gratitude, an attitude of gratitude, is most salutary and bespeaks the realization that we are now in heaven. It is crowned with a consciousness of unity. And when we're in a consciousness of unity, we're in the flow. When we're in a consciousness of unity, the universe and us are working together in harmony with ease and grace. And it's just a beautiful dance. How many of you experienced moments where you've been in that beautiful dance with the universe? Okay? And you've probably been in a state of gratitude before, after, during, somewhere in that process. Gratitude is the consciousness to live in for being in that state, in that flow. So your homework. Number... What? Huh? Bring it. All right. Number 1, pay attention. This week, as you're engaged in the actions of giving and receiving, just pay attention. Just notice what's going on in your mind, in your thoughts, in your feelings. If you're giving out money, you're going to have an opportunity in just a very few minutes to engage in the act of giving and receiving, right? Called our collection. Breathe, breathe, breathe. The first service actually laughed when I said that. They got it. You're going to have the opportunity to get engaged in that. Just notice your thoughts and feelings around that. Notice as you're giving your money to, say, the utility company and the cell phone company and whoever else, your mortgage or your rent, just notice your attitude as you're engaged in the process of giving and receiving. As you're interacting with people, just notice your action, your consciousness as you're giving and receiving in the interaction with another person. Some of you will take part in that in a few minutes in the social hall. Just notice your attitude. Just pay attention. Are you giving from open and abundance and radiating the wealth of the universe and the light of the divine through and as you? Or is there something else going on that you just want to pay attention to and might want to work through? Number 2, as you're paying attention, become more conscious and practice more of the giving and receiving. And here's how I work with this. If you already know that you're a great giver, but you're a lousy receiver, start practicing receiving more. If you know that you're a great receiver, but you're not really good at giving right now, practice giving more. It's like you go to a gym, if you got lots of muscles but no cardio, you start working on your cardio. If you got great legs but no upper body, you work on your upper body strength. So find out which one you're doing. Be aware of which one you're doing. You know which one it is, right? You know where you're stronger and you know where you could use a little help. Practice that one. Do more of the giving, do more of the receiving. Step it up either way. Old what's-her-name, a.k.a. Catherine Ponder, has this wonderful affirmation, which we'll do together in a minute. Divine love expressing through me now draws to me all that is needed to make my life happy and complete. Want to say that together with me? Yeah. Divine love. Expressing through me now. Oh, come on, like you feel it. Let's try that again. Divine love. Expressing through me now. Draws to me. All that is needed. To make my life happy and complete. Breathe that in. That's your new reality for this week, if it hasn't been a reality. And then finally, the third practice. It comes from a Bible phrase. It says, wait on the Lord. And a lot of us misunderstand that to mean sit around and wait for God to give us an answer. That's not what it means. The word that was used, that was translated as wait, is the Hebrew word kavah, Q-A-V-A-H. And what it literally means is to bind together. What it means, what it invites us to do, is become in one consciousness with the divine. To take a God moment before anything you do and say, God, what do you want to express through me today? What do you want to express through me here? See, that gets us out of the laying bricks and starts to get us into the cathedral building consciousness. And then our lives starts to expand. I have a friend who's a relatively new minister, and she's creating a talk for she's candidating for a church, and she was starting to write a talk, and she says, I'm having real difficulty with this talk. I can't get it to settle. I said, have you asked God what it wants to express through you? And she goes, oh, I can do that? Yes. That's how I start every single talk I do, is I sit down and I say, okay, God, what do you want to express through me today? And I listen and I start writing. If you're going to interact with a person, especially if you're going to interact with a difficult person, ask God, what do you want to express through me here in this situation? When you first get up in the morning, infinite presence, what do you want to express through me today? Before you go to work, as you're sitting outside in the parking lot, about to walk into the place where you do your work, or walking from one bedroom to another if you work at home, just ask, infinite presence, what do you want to express through me here today? And start to listen and just be willing to be open. You don't necessarily have to hear great, beautiful, big answers. It's just, I'm willing to be open to that expression. I'm willing to be open to Spirit expressing through me. Are you willing to do that? Yes. So 3 things. 1, pay attention. 2, strengthen what you're not so good at, giving or receiving. And number 3, take a moment, take a God moment before you do anything and allow yourself to come into alignment with it. And you can say with Catherine Ponder, I do what is mine to do easily and well. Say it together. I do what is mine to do easily and well. I close with a quote from Eric Butterworth, and you're primed and ready. Oh, you're so good. Isn't Judy good? Isn't Judy good? Yes. Eric Butterworth, Spiritual Economics. When you discover the wonder of giving, you will wonder how you could have ever lived so long in any other way. It is the key that makes truth, that's capital T, truth. It is the key that makes truth work, that opens the door to good you have been seeking, and that gives life that added glow. It can be one of the great discoveries of your life. When you become a committed giver, you can no more go back to the old way of living than you can go back to living in prehistoric times. So this week, you're going to practice being a committed giver in every single aspect of your lives. Let's take that into prayer. So I turn within to that infinite presence, the infinite life, the infinite abundance, the infinite opulent good that is already given, that is already in full expression. It is already in existence. It is unlimited. There is no withhold in the divine. There's only that free expression, that free flow. And I recognize that each of us is one of that infinite presence right here, right now. Each of us is one of that infinite flow, that perfect, abundant good. That whether we remember it or forget it, no matter what the circumstances in our life might look like at the moment, we are the infinite flow of the good. We are the infinite flow of God, and all we need to do is open the doors, open the gates, and let it flow. Back and forth, back and forth. And so I speak my word, that each person here, each person who is in the sound of my voice, hears this idea, hears this principle, and applies it more deeply than ever into their lives. That we give with more open hearts, we receive with more open hearts. That we ask for what we want, that we forgive ourselves and others, and that we live in a constant state of gratitude. We open to this infinite presence. We say yes in our heart of hearts. And by doing this, we live lives that are absolutely prosperous, joyous, and abundant in every single idea, in every single way that it is possible to be joyous, prosperous, and abundant. And so we relax into a universe. We relax into that which is in a conspiracy for our good. We relax into divine love. We let it express through us. We let ourselves receive that expression back. And it's just a beautiful dance of spirit. We love being on the dance floor of life with Spirit as partner. And so for all the good that comes from this, knowing that as we do this week, our lives start to shift and move and get transformed in ways that are better than we can even think of. And so we open to that presence and in great gratitude for all the good that comes up, for all the manifestations that happen in people's lives, and just simply for the ease of living, knowing that we live in a universe of joy and love. I'm so grateful. And so I release this word into a law that moves it into form and expression in each of our lives right here, right now, on this human realm, on this physical plane, because God is as much here as it is anywhere else, fully. We say yes, we let it be, and together we say, and so it is. Thank you.